What's up, you guys? It's Jaded. So I've been getting a lot of questions about, what's good with the Barbarian in 105, what skills to use, what weapons, etc. So I just wanted to put together a quick little small guide that can kind of update you guys with where the Barb's currently at and what skills you guys should look into. Alright, so first I want to touch on the weapons before we get into the skills. This is sort of axe and mace versus, a mighty weapon. What's better, what situation, etc. And what I found myself is there's no reason not to use an axe or a mace for that 10% crit when you're dealing with very high HP, high monster level stuff. So if you're key farming Ubers, rolling in a high monster level, you're definitely going to want to look to an axe or a mace, because you never run out of wrath, because you're always just spinning on top of one mob for like 5 minutes, and you'll never run out of wrath. So it's not that important to get fury. Now on the flip side, if you're running low monster level and your DPS is just too high, everything's dying super fast, I would definitely recommend a mighty weapon just to help keep up your wrath, even though it's really hard to keep it up in this patch. All right, now getting into the skills, what's new here? So for the primary, I'm using Frenzy a lot more. I just find it to be really good on high HP, Uber boss farming, because as long as you're sitting there wailing on the boss, you're not gonna lose wrath, and your DPS increase is actually quite nice because I like to use Maniac. There's really no other rune to use. Like, maybe you want to use the stun rune. I haven't seen that get used too much by anyone, but it might be good versus bosses like Cool, who warp around a lot, cast a lot of spells. But I've been sticking with Maniac. But again, if you go back to like lower monster level stuff, Bash is still really good, just to get that high fury gain, and there's no ramp up time with it. Moving on now to probably the only skill you're gonna change this patch is I guess we'll call it the final skill. What everyone used to use in the previous patch was Warcry. Some people used Rend that had really high end gear, but for the most part, everyone used Warcry. Now, the only reason you're going to use Warcry is if you're doing like 4-player co-op and you're the only Barbarian, or it's good to have it on one of the Barbs, just to give everyone a nice defensive increase. So that's the only time I would use Warcry. So if you're playing solo or you're not that Barb in the group, you have a few options here. The most popular one being Overpower, and this is because it's a combination of a good offensive skill, but also it can be a great defensive skill. So instead of using Warcry, I'd strongly recommend using this, if you're playing solo. Use Crushing Advance. It deflects a lot of damage. You'll pretty much always have it up. There will be some small downtime periods, but as long as your crit chance is high, and it should be with this build, you'll pretty much have Crushing Advance on all the time. Now, this is just a good defensive rune to use. If you want to use something more offensive, you can check out Killing Spree. It gives you 10% more crit. So if you don't need the defense, you might want to switch to this rune. I'm at like 70% crit chance if I use this pretty much all the time. Now, the other option here is Rend. Not my favorite skill, just because Overpower, the difference between Rend and Overpower when using it is Rend will actually stop all your animations. You'll stop in your tracks, and you'll have to sit there and watch that animation happen. So it stops all of your other damage, but you can just get this off, and then there's a dot over time on everything. So I'm not a big fan of that, because Overpower, it just it adds to the double tornado sort of philosophy of never stop moving. So I find Rend a little bit clunky, but there's still some good runes here to check out. So I actually recently tested the 9% damage done by Rend. You gain that as life, and I didn't think this was a good rune, but after testing it, it gives you a lot of life back. And of course, it's based off your damage, so the more, the higher end gear you have, the more life you're gonna get back. But I was really surprised, like pleasantly surprised, how much this can kind of work as a defensive skill as well. But if you're looking just for straight raw damage, you're going to want to go with Lacerate. This one adds the least amount of utility, but just the most DPS in general. So you can go with that, or you can go with the more utility side of it, which is Mutilate. I find that the slow on Mutilate, it's going to slow, bosses and things like that, any champ packs. I just find that it's not that useful, and it doesn't come in handy that many times, because other than like say the Fallen, you know, the little fallen guys or the shaman who run away. There's not a whole lot of mobs that are annoying like that anymore. Like everything kind of comes to you and just sticks on you. So I didn't find a lot of use for Mutilate, but I could see its purpose, you know, doing like uber farming, maybe you want to slow cooldown, but really that's it. So I'm not a big fan of it, but you could check that out. Other than that, I mean, you could really use anything in this last slot, but those are the three most popular. I've seen some people incorporate weapon throw into this and, you know, get a weapon throw belt and you're pretty much set, and then switch your last passive to like no escape, but that's kind of a more specialized build. And I've toyed around with a lot of other things. You know, I even checked out Earthquake for a while because I thought that might be good. The reason Earthquake sucks is just for the cooldown amount, it just doesn't do enough damage. And also, stuff likes to move around a lot, so it's really hard to get all that damage done properly sometimes. But I can see someone like exploiting, you know, now that you can leave a game and your cooldowns reset, but you keep your stacks. Someone could probably be, you know, using Earthquake and taking advantage of that. But that's a little gimmicky, so I haven't been doing that. Now in terms of passives, Ruthless and Weapon Master are still like the mainstay of this of your passives, but the third one really up for grabs at this point. Like I've seen so many different passives for this slot, everything from Nerves of Steel, Tough as Nails, you know, if you want the more defensive side, to Bloodthirst if you want that life steal. Animosity, haven't seen that get used as much lately, but still okay. Superstition, you know, really anything in here. Unforgiving I've seen get used. Me personally, I like Boonable Kathos because now more than ever in this patch, you know, you're losing Wrath quite often. So having that 30 seconds there just to get it faster actually increases DPS quite a bit. So if you don't need the defense, then check out Boonable Kathos. But yeah, really that's about it in terms of skills. So, you know, go check out Crushing Advance on Overpower, definitely a strong skill, and Frenzy with Maniac, and see sort of like how you feel with these skills. One quick thing to note too in terms of gear, I've actually dropped my 12% run speed on my boots for some Ice Climbers because the raw stats on Ice Climbers is just too good to pass up. And movement speed is not as important when dealing with, you know, doing like key runs and stuff like that. So that's gonna do it, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me and looking at this little barb update I did. Be sure to leave any comments, questions you guys got below, and I'll see you guys soon.